Look at this map of Croatia's stunning Adriatic coastline, and you'll notice something peculiar. Near the southern end of the coast, there's a tiny break where another country suddenly appears for just 20 kilometers. Technically, the country is Bosnia and Herzegovina, but for simplicity and because most people do, we'll just say Bosnia here. This small slice of coastline might seem insignificant, but it represents one of history's most costly geographical decisions. What you're looking at is the result of a 300-year-old deal that seemed brilliant at the time but would ultimately leave an entire nation almost completely cut off from the sea. So in this video, we uncover why Bosnia barely touches the Adriatic Sea and what it really costs them. Bosnia and Herzegovina is a land of dramatic mountains, winding rivers, and vibrant cities that tell stories of centuries of history. Sarajevo, the capital, blends Ottoman, Austro-Hungarian, and modern influences, while Mostar's iconic bridge stands as a symbol of resilience and culture. The country is known for hearty cuisine, traditional music, and coffee culture that lingers in sunlit squares. But for all its landscape, culture, and history, Bosnia's access to the sea is surprisingly tiny, a historical quirk that would have outsized consequences for the country. Bosnia's coastal strip is so small that if you blink while driving, you'll miss it entirely. At just 20 kilometers, it's the second shortest mainland coastline in the world, shorter than anywhere except Monaco, which has only 4 kilometers of coastline. To put this into perspective, you could walk on Bosnia's entire coastline in about 2 hours. The town of Neum is Bosnia's only seaside settlement, home to just over 4,000 people. This tiny coastal enclave splits Croatia's coastline completely in two, creating what one foreign correspondent called the world's most ridiculous border. For Croatians, traveling from Split to the popular tourist destination of Dubrovnik, this border creates a surreal experience. You drive through Croatia, suddenly find yourself in Bosnia for 9 kilometers, then you're back in Croatia again. Until recently, this meant 2 border checks within 20 kilometers, often resulting in massive traffic jams during peak tourist season. But how did this bizarre geographical situation come to exist? The answer takes us back to the Age of Empires, when a small republic made a calculated decision that would echo through the centuries. The year was 1699, and the maritime republic of Dubrovnik faced a serious problem. The Venetian Republic was aggressively expanding along the Dalmatian coast, and Dubrovnik's leaders feared they would be next. But rather than building armies or seeking military alliances, they chose a different strategy that seemed genius at the time. Dubrovnik decided to give away a small strip of their territory to the Ottoman Empire, specifically the coastal area around Neum. The logic was simple. Venice wouldn't dare attack Dubrovnik if it meant crossing Ottoman territory and risking war with one of the world's most powerful empires. The Ottoman-controlled strip would serve as a buffer zone, protecting Dubrovnik from Venetian conquest. This arrangement worked exactly as planned. Venice never attacked Dubrovnik, and the ancient city-state maintained its independence for another century until Napoleon's conquest in 1809. But the Ottomans weren't about to give up this valuable coastal territory for about 179 years, from 1699 to 1878. The Neum area remained under Ottoman control even as empires rose and fell around it. When Austria-Hungary took control of Bosnia from the Ottomans in 1878, they tried to buy back the Neum Strip, but failed. Instead, they stationed warships to block the port until they gained control of the entire region. However, by then, the borders were set. Even when Yugoslavia was formed after World War I, the historic boundaries were preserved, ensuring that what is now Bosnia would retain its tiny window to the sea. Bosnia's limited coastal access has created a modern economic nightmare, unlike neighboring Croatia, which benefits from 1,800 kilometers of stunning Adriatic coastline. Bosnia is almost entirely dependent on its neighbors for maritime trade. Bosnia's position is even stranger when compared globally. Landlocked countries like Austria or Switzerland have adapted to their situation by investing heavily in rail and cross-border trade. But Bosnia is in a peculiar middle ground, technically coastal but without the infrastructure or geography to benefit from it. This almost landlocked status has left Bosnia in a kind of economic limbo, paying the costs of dependence without reaping the advantages of true maritime access. The most telling example of this dependence is the port of Ploče in Croatia. Plans for the port of Ploče date back to 1939, but World War II delayed development. It was only properly built up after the war to serve as Bosnia's main outlet to the sea. A railway line was constructed from Sarajevo to Ploče, making Bosnia completely reliant on Croatian infrastructure for access to global markets. That resilience remains today. Bosnia's main transport artery, Corridor VC, links Sarajevo to Ploče but begins and ends in neighbouring countries, underlining Bosnia's dependence on Croatia for its maritime trade. Croatia and Bosnia signed the Ploče Agreement in 1996, which should guarantee duty-free passage for Bosnian goods. But Bosnia has no real leverage in these negotiations. When political tensions rise between the countries, Bosnia's economy suffers. The numbers tell the story. Bosnia imports almost twice as much as it exports, with imports totaling $15.39 billion against exports of just $9.68 billion in 2022. This massive trade deficit is partly financed by remittances from the 2 million Bosnians living abroad, but the lack of proper port facilities certainly doesn't help Bosnia's export potential. Meanwhile, Bosnia's own coastal town of Neum remains primarily a tender port where cruise ships anchor at sea, rather than a proper commercial harbour. Plans to develop Neum into a full cargo port have been opposed by locals, who want to protect the bay's ecology, leaving Bosnia with no viable alternative to Croatian ports. Perhaps nowhere are the costs of Bosnia's coastal limitation more visible than in tourism. Croatia's Adriatic coast attracts millions of visitors annually, generating billions in tourism revenue. Dubrovnik alone, just 47 kilometers from Neum, draws millions each year and features in countless films and TV shows. Bosnia, meanwhile, struggles with one of Europe's best-kept secrets. Neum's cheaper, quieter beaches remain overshadowed, and most of Bosnia's tourism growth has happened inland in Sarajevo and Mostar. Neum offers a Mediterranean climate, clear waters, and significantly cheaper prices than Croatian resorts, sometimes half the cost of accommodation across the border, yet most tourists have never heard of it. The town only began developing as a tourist destination in the late 1960s, and much of the infrastructure dates to the Yugoslav era, giving it a distinctly retro feel. While this could be charming, it also means Neum lacks the polished resort infrastructure that draws international tourists to Croatian destinations. In 2022, Croatia delivered what many see as the final blow to Bosnia's coastal relevance, the Pelješac Bridge. This 2.4-kilometer cable-stayed bridge completely bypasses the Neum corridor, allowing Croatians and tourists to travel from Split to Dubrovnik without setting foot in Bosnia. The bridge project, 85% funded by the European Union at the cost of €526 million, was controversial from the start. Bosnia opposed the project, fearing it would cut off their access to international waters and deprive Neum of the through traffic that provided much of its economic activity. To address these concerns, Croatia raised the bridge height from 44 to 55 meters, theoretically allowing large ships to reach Neum. But the bay is too shallow for commercial shipping, making the concessions symbolic, and the economic impact was felt almost immediately. Businesses that relied on through traffic, gas stations, roadside restaurants, and small hotels reported steep drops in revenue once cars and buses stopped passing through. The bridge reduces travel time by 37 minutes and eliminates the hassle of border crossings, but for Bosnia, it represents another step toward complete coastal irrelevance. Bosnia's coastal predicament reflects a broader pattern of geopolitical isolation. While Croatia joined the European Union in 2013 and became part of the Schengen area in 2023, Bosnia only became an official EU candidate in late 2022, but progress towards full membership has been slow, more symbolic than substantive so far. This creates a complex situation where Bosnia's tiny coastal strip represents one of the EU's external borders. Croatian EU membership meant that border checks became more stringent, turning what was once a minor inconvenience into a major bottleneck for trade and tourism. Even Bosnia's energy security is compromised by its coastal limitations. The country has abundant hydroelectric potential, but limited options for importing energy resources by sea. This forces reliance on overland routes through neighbouring countries, creating additional vulnerabilities and costs. Today, Bosnia pays a steep price for that medieval decision made in Dubrovnik over 300 years ago. The country that once controlled important trade routes between Central Europe and the Mediterranean now finds itself almost entirely landlocked, dependent on neighbours for access to global markets. The economic costs are staggering when compared to regional neighbours. Croatia's tourism industry contributes significantly to its GDP, while Bosnia struggles to develop its coastal potential with just 20 kilometers of shoreline. Serbian and Croatian ports handle regional trade, while Bosnia routes most commerce through foreign facilities. Perhaps most importantly, Bosnia lacks the maritime identity that has shaped other Adriatic nations. While countries like Croatia, Montenegro, and Albania have built national identities partly around their relationship with the sea, Bosnia remains oriented inland, culturally and economically cut off from Mediterranean influences that have shaped the region for millennia. Bosnia, though, isn't giving up on its maritime ambitions. Current Bosniak political parties are pushing plans to convert Neum into a major freight port, complete with railway connections and highway access. However, this faces fierce resistance from locals who want to preserve the ecological integrity of Maliston Bay. More intriguingly, Bosnia and Croatia are currently negotiating a privileged economic zone that would give Bosnia special access to Ploče port facilities for up to 99 years. Bosnia wants something approaching sovereignty over part of the port, while Croatia only wants to offer commercial passage rights. This negotiation could reshape Bosnia's maritime future entirely. The broader implications extend far beyond the Balkans. Bosnia's situation mirrors other geographical anomalies worldwide, where historical accidents create modern economic disadvantages. From Lesotho's complete enclosure within South Africa to Bangladesh's complex border with India, these geographical quirks continue to shape national destinies in unexpected ways. For travelers planning to visit the region, understanding this history explains why that brief border crossing exists, and why the new bridge matters so much to regional politics. So, was Bosnia's tiny slice of Adriatic coastline a clever historical move, or a costly mistake that still shapes its economy and trade today? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most surprising geographical stories.